So I on the behalf of organizing team for the short-term training program on cybersecurity, current trends and future perspective, welcome all the participants. I am thankful to the speaker of the session, Dr. Mukherjee. Now I invite my colleague, Professor Yadvi Kaur, to introduce the expert speaker of this session.
Good morning, all. Today's speaker, Dr. Animesh Mukherjee is an associate professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. Prior to this, he worked as an assistant professor in the same department for 4.5 years. Immediately before that, he was a postdoctoral researcher in the Complex Systems Language Lab, ISI Foundation, Italy. He received his PhD from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, with a thesis on self-organization of human speech sound inventories. His main research interests are in applying complex system approaches, mainly complex networks and agent-based simulations, to different problems in computer science, including human language evolution and change, web social media, information retrieval, and natural language processing. He regularly publishes in top conferences like ACM SIGKWD, ACM CIKM, ACM CSCW, ICWSM, ACL, ELNLP, COLING, ACM IEEE, JCDL, and journals like PNAC, SCI Reports, ACM TKWD, ICM CACM, IEEE TKDE, IEEE JSAC, Physics Revolution, letters. He regularly serves on the program committee of various top conferences like IJCAI, EMNLP, COLING, IEEE ACM, JCLD, IEEE Globalcom, and high impact journals like PNAS, SCI Reports, IEEE TKDE, Knowledge Based Systems, Advances in Complex Systems. He is the Technical Program Committee Chair of IEEE ACM, COMS Cosmets 2018, and the workshop chair of ACM Compute 2017. He also has a profile collaboration record with collaborators from different parts of the world, from both academia and industry. His work has received media attention from various agencies, including MIT, Technical Review, BBC, Guardian, etc. He has received many notable awards, including the Humboldt Fellowship from Experienced Researchers 2018 to 2021, Simons Associate ICTP Italy 2014 to 2019, Gandhian Young Technological Innovation Award 2017, IBM Faculty Award 2015, INSA Medical Young Scientist 2014, and INAI Young Engineering Award 2012, among many others. So this was the introduction for Dr. Animesh Mukherjee. Now, Dr. Animesh Mukherjee, you can start, please, sir.
Very much. So I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah, so I'll start sharing my screen now.
Yes, sir.
Today I shall be talking a little bit about our research on rise of hate content in social media. So we have been working in this area for the last 3 to 4 years and have been trying to study different aspects of hate content, including how hate speech spreads in the social media, how can one detect hate content as well as hateful users using machine learning algorithms, and also like what could be the different ways in order to combat hate content over social media. So before I delve into the presentation, so there is a small disclaimer that I would like to make at the very beginning. So this presentation you might see at some point in time would contain offensive and hateful words. However, this cannot be avoided because of the nature of the work itself. And we have tried to suitably obfuscate things wherever appropriate. But even then, if there is some miss on our part, please forgive us. Okay, so I guess social media does not need any introduction to anyone. These days, it has become the de facto standard for sharing any form of information on the web. So it's not only about sharing information, but also gathering information is one of the primary ways in which you gather information these days is through the news items shared on social media. So hardly people look into newspapers. They rather look into their social media feeds, and whatever news pops up on those feeds, they go through them, and that's how their daily news quota is fulfilled. So now this has resulted in a lot of positive consequences. Like social media, as we know, has been used for many positive purposes. Like for instance, starting from simple sharing of information to more complex situations like disaster management, reaching out to people during disaster through social media, reaching out like real life relief materials to people during disaster. Then social media has also been able to unfold newer friendships, newer collaborations across borders. So while like everything has a positive side, equally true is the negative side. So along with all the good things that social media has brought, there are a few bad things also that we find very prevalent over social media these days. So some of these are like increased polarization. I guess many of you have already observed it. I mean, surrounding different topics, like it could be topics of national importance, like the general election, or like passing of some bills, etc., to like even more sensitive matters like religion, ethnic race, and things like that. And similarly, there have been an increase in the amount of abuse and hate speech, which we will see a little bit more in details in today's talk, which has inflicted the social media. Actually, like there is a very nice report in the Harvard Business Review that was published in 26 by Umar, where he states that social media initially was thought of to be a e-town square, like a place where people can come together and discuss their problems, their day-to-day matters, also share information with others, share different important and valuable conversations with each other. From that town square kind of a picture, social media is slowly over time portraying a picture like a mosh pit, where, like, people have made it a platform for micro abusing. So people abuse each other, people express hatred among between hatred toward other communities on the social media platform very easily. And the problems are actually manifolded because of certain important factors which one needs to be very careful about. So once you have an abusive or hateful post on social media, it has a much longer repercussion. So it's like if you fight with somebody like outside your house, you fight in the morning and you forget in the evening. By fight, I mean fighting verbally. However, if there is such a fight over social media, like this actually has a much more, continual effect. So many more people get to see or get to find about your fight. It exists there for social media for a very long time. And actually, the same thing gets reinstantiated. The same fight gets reinstantiated multiple times. So without much of reconciliation. So all these are in some way some of the strong negative consequences of social media in recent times. So and this is not only restricted now in the online world. Some of these have very like strong offline consequences. Some of the examples noted here will ring the bell, like the Bulandshahr violence, the Pittsburgh shooting, the Rohingya genocide. So these are all examples of cases where social media has been like hold responsible to be a propeller of some of these offline events, real life events. So for instance, I guess most of you are aware of the Rohingya genocide and the Bulandshahr violence, which have been happening in the neighboring countries. And the Pittsburgh shooting is also very well known. Like, I'll talk a little bit more about the Pittsburgh in details, and that will give us like more examples of how the online world is actually intervening with our offline world. So, and it's this kind of negative consequences are all pervasive. Like, they are not restricted to one single platform. They are restricted to multiple platforms. Like it could be Twitter, it could be WhatsApp. So this is an example from Indian WhatsApp groups. So this is a specific derogatory message against a minority religious
Hello, ma'am.
सर आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Hello, ma'am. There is a audio.
Dr. Unmesh, your voice is not audible.
So this is the last post that he made on a social media platform, Gab, before he goes on and does the shooting. Okay, so if we were like,
Hello, ma'am. The screening is also off, so
yeah, so there was a network issue. Yeah, so just give me a moment.
Okay,
sure, ma'am.
ma'am.
Sure.
So how long? So how far have the audience seen? How far have the audience seen?
Yes, now the screen is visible.
Yeah, but how far have the audience listened? I mean,
Yes, ma'am. There is.
Sir, we were with you till that slide. Let's kill Jews.
okay, let's kill Jews. Okay. So I'll start from the beginning of that slide. So this slide was done, right?
Yes, sir.
It could be Twitter, it could be WhatsApp. So this is an example from Indian WhatsApp groups. So this is a specific derogatory message against a minority religious group in the Indian WhatsApp public group discussions. And similarly, so this is the example that I was trying to point out related to the Pittsburgh shooting case. So if some of you have been following this, if some of you have been following this particular event, you might have noticed in the newspapers that the primary accused in this particular event was Robert Bowers. Now this guy actually made his last post on a social media platform called Gab, where he writes something like this: HIAS likes to bring invaders in that kill our people. I can't sit by and watch my people get slaughtered. Screw your optics, I'm going on. So this is the last post that he made on a social media platform, Gab, before he goes on and does the shooting. Okay, so if we were moderating these kind of platforms and the social media posts, and we're following people like Robert Bowers, who are very active in such social media platforms, then we might have even been able to prevent the catastrophe. So I will talk in today's lecture, I will talk a little bit more about this special social media platform, which many of you might not be aware of. This is a recently growing social media platform that actually hosts a lot of hate speech and abusive speech in itself. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in the next few slides. So in today's talk, I'll be summarizing two of our works. One is about spread of hate speech. This was published in the ACM website. And the second one is about how to counter hate speech, or how to contain the effect of hate speech in online platforms. So these are the two works that I'll be primarily covering today. However, we have been doing many other works, and if you're interested, you can visit our website and you will get more information about them. Like we have been studying the temporal dynamics of hate speech in social media, detection of hate speech in multiple languages, then misogyny or crime against women, or hatred against women. So all these works are already available in the public domain. And you can visit our website to have a look into them if you're interested for them. So this work is carried out by three PhD students, Bini Matthew, Punojoy Shah, and Mithun Das. And one of my collaborator, Professor Pawan Goel, who is also from the same department as I am. So So the first work is about spread of hate speech in online social media. So I have been talking about this for some time now. So basically what we will try to do in this work is to, look how hate speech would spread in a social network if it is unmoderated, if it is left unmoderated, if there is no moderation, if there is no check on the hate speech being spread on that platform, how fast does it spread? Does it really spread or does it die off? Okay, so this is one question which bothered us, and we tried to look into this and have an empirical answer for this. And this was published in ACM website, and it also received the best paper honorable mention. So as I said, I'll be talking about this platform gab.com. Gab actually promotes itself as a champion of free speech. However, it has been criticized as an echo chamber of alt-right users. So these are like far rightist people mostly. It is in nature, it is very similar to Twitter. It allows you to post content, it allows you to share others' content, it allows you to follow others, it allows you to like others' posts, etc. However, here the moderation is much less strict than platforms like Twitter and Facebook. So in Twitter and Facebook, there is a strict hate speech or abusive speech moderation policy. Like if you post abusive content on Twitter, very likely that in the next 24 hours, your content is going to be deleted. Not only that, it could be even that your account would get suspended. However, Gab is like relatively more relaxed. It kind of says that it promotes free speech, but in the disguise of that, it actually promotes post of hateful content without any fear of repercussion, because like there is no repercussion as to like deletion of posts or deletion of the account itself. So people freely keep on posting hateful content on Gab. Okay. So in order to do this study, what we did is we crawled a massive data set of 21 million posts and around 343,000 users using the standard Gab API. So this has information about the basic details of the user, like the username, all the posts of the user, the followers and the followings of the user. Okay, so all these data have been crawled using the Gab API to run our analysis. So primarily, we do the following things. We create a seed set of hateful users, okay, each say doing roughly 10 plus hate posts. We create a repost network of the users and a corresponding belief network. We initialize the seed set of users with the score of 1 and the rest with 0. Then we run a diffusion model on the belief network to update the beliefs of the users, and users who have a belief score of something between 0.75 and 1. So the belief score runs between 0 and 1. And if the user has a very high belief score, then we call the user to be hateful. And if the user has a low belief score, that is from 0 to 0.25, we call this user as a non-hateful user. So the number of users after this exercise that we got as hateful are around 2,300, and the number of users who are non-hateful are around 58,000, roughly 59,000. The rest we actually do not comment because they are somewhere in the middle of the spectrum, and it's very difficult to infer their inclinations, whether they are hateful or non-hateful. So we do not comment about the rest of the users. However, So this slide actually summarizes the things that I'll be discussing in the next few slides. So these slides look too much crammed with too much of information, with too many information. So we will slowly look into the steps one by one now. So the first thing is to construct the seed set of hateful users. So what we did was we built a lexicon of 45 very high precision keywords, which are actually indicative of hate. Now these includes various racial slurs, like the ones that I have cited here as examples. Okay, so these are some of the examples of racial slurs again against a target community. Sexual orientation, like the LGBT community, or which could be like something related to the body shape, etc. So what we do is that we find out users who have 10 plus posts with one or more of these high precision keywords. Okay, so on Gab, since things are
Sir, again, your voice is not audible.
So the internet connection seems to be a little poor.
Okay, sir.
Yes, ma'am, there is problem in the network.
Yeah, there is problem in the network. It's getting disconnected multiple times.
Yes, ma'am, this is right.
There is a continuous loss of connection. I'll um,
Currently,
let me try to join from some other computer. Please hold on for.
Fine, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
There was some network outage. There was some network outage. I'll try to start again. Give me a moment. Can you please allow me to share my screen?
Yes, sir.
It is showing host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Sir, you got the rights.
Find the user say 10 plus post with one of these 8 keywords, you are kind of pretty sure that this guy is like a hateful user and is frequently posting hateful messages. So this is a first initial seed set that we build for a set of users. Now we construct something called a repost network. So how do we do it? So let us say we have a social network like the following. It's a simple graph with 3 nodes. Okay, so the node A, you read it like this. The node A actually posts 17 messages. Node C posts 10 messages and reposts 5 of the messages that comes from A. Okay. Node B reposts 3 of the messages that comes from C, 9 of the messages that comes from A, and does not post anything by himself or herself. This is how you construct the repost network. From the repost network, you construct something called a belief network. Now, how do you do this? So look at the node C. So out of the total 15 post plus repost that the node C makes, it makes 10 posts by itself. So that is 10 by 15. So we call the belief of C to be 10 by 15. Belief of C on itself to be 10 by 15, which is 0.67 roughly. And we call the belief of C on A as 5 by 15, which is 0.33. And you see the direction of the edges have got reversed. So now this shows that C's belief on A is 0.33. Earlier it showed that C reposted 5 of the posts made by A. Now the direction of the edge has changed and we say that C has a belief of 0.33 on A and a belief of 0.67 on itself. Similarly, B has a belief of 0.25 on C and a belief of 0.75 on A and no belief and a belief of 0 on itself. So now we run a belief propagation or a diffusion model, a simple, very simple diffusion model. How does it work? So let us say that A is one of the nodes who is in the seed set, who is in our seed set. So we know that A is a hateful person because A has made more than 10 posts which has one or more of those seed hateful keywords. So we start from A. Now, every time point, we calculate the belief of the other nodes. So the belief of C in the next time point, that is I plus 1, is expressed as 0.33 into the belief of A, okay, plus 0.67 into the belief of C. So now C's belief score at this point is 0. A's belief score at this point is 1 because it's a hateful user. So now after this step, C's belief score becomes 0.33 into 1 because it was A's belief score plus 0.67 into 0. So after the first step, C's belief score becomes 0.33. So in this way, you can keep computing the belief scores of each and every individual node over iterations. After a point in time, you will see that the belief score of the nodes do not change. So they get fixed at some number. So this is called the convergence point. Okay. So at convergence, all those nodes which have a belief score of 0.75 to 1 are denoted as hateful users, whereas those which have a belief score of 0 to 0.25 are denoted as non-hateful users. So this was the thing that I was summarizing in the very first slide. So now, once we have got the set of hateful and non-hateful users, so we have, as I said, we have 2,300 roughly hateful users and around 59,000 non-hateful users. Now, once we have got them, we have to somehow our method that we work. So, so the method that like executed is actually good for any further analysis. So what we do is that whatever hateful users and whatever non-hateful users we get, we randomly sample some 100 users from them. And we ask 2 of the annotators who are experts in judging, like who have been working in hate speech analysis for quite some time and who are experts in judging whether some user is hateful or not. We ask them to check whatever we have detected as hateful and non-hateful users and tell us like whether the model has been able to predict correctly or not. So with the annotator 1, the agreement of our model is 86.9%, and with annotator 2, it's 93.2% for the hateful users. And for the non-hateful users, it's even higher, 92.2 and 99.4. And the agreement between the 2 users, which is measured by the Cohen's kappa, is also like above 0.7 for both of the sets. So we have some reliability on the algorithm that produced the hateful and the non-hateful users. From this annotation, from this manual annotation, we at least have some reliability. So in order to further establish the reliability, what we did was we tried to see like what are the different topics in which the hateful users post and what are the different topics in which the non-hateful users post. So in Gab, just like in Twitter, you have various topics and you can make your post public under different topics. Okay, you can tag your post with different topics. And what we see that the posts that are made by the hateful users detected by our system, those posts actually have tags like Jews are the synagogue of Satan, the black race sucks, etc., which are clearly indicative, the name themselves are clearly indicative of being hateful. Okay, whereas the non-hateful users post in more general topics, which do not typically have a hateful alliance. Next, we also see what are the typical URLs or web links that are shared by the hateful and the non-hateful users. What we see is that many of the hateful users actually post links which correspond to various rightist channels. Like this could be news channels, radio channels, and things like that. Whereas for the non-hateful users, this is not the case. So these three set of analysis, the manual annotation, the hateful topics, the domains shared, all these together point to the fact that our detection method of hateful and non-hateful users is pretty reliable, and we can proceed with further analysis. So what further analysis did we do? So as I told you in the beginning, we wanted to find out how hate speech would spread in a network where there is no moderation or very loose moderation, okay, where there is no one to stop it. So this is typically measured in a social network setting using something called a cascade. Okay, so a cascade is a path traced by a post as it is reposted by the users. Okay, so however, as we will see in the next few slides, that it is impossible to trace the exact influence path. So what we will do is we will first leverage the social connection between the users, and we will use a special heuristic called the LRIF, least recent influencer model, to infer the cascade path. So let's see how we do it. So again, let us imagine that this is a small snapshot of the GAD social network. So you have 5 nodes here, and each link now is a follower-followee link. Okay, so this node C here actually follows node A and follows node B. Okay, similarly, node D here follows node B and follows node E. So these are follower-followee links. Now, the numbers that you see here are timestamps at which a particular user has made a post. Let's say A has made a post at time 0. B has made a post at time 100. D have made a post at 500, E at 400, and C at 300. Now suppose we want to find out the influencer of C. So we want to find out who is the influencer of C. Is it A or is it B? Okay, because you see that C follows both B and A. So therefore, the message could come from either A or it could come from B. Now, how do I know from whom did C receive the message? It is following both of them. So in order to disambiguate this, what we do is we take the heuristic, which is called the least recent influencer. That is the person, among the set of people whom C is following, the person who has posted the message earliest, we call that person to be the influencer of C. So in this, that's why the least recent. So in this case, A will be the influencer of C. However, you could also think of another heuristic where you say that B is the influencer of C, not A. So that type of heuristic is called the most recent influencer model. Both these models are very similar in spirit and the results do not change much. Okay. So using this heuristic, now we know that who exactly C is influenced by, who exactly B is influenced by, who exactly D is influenced by, and who exactly E is influenced by. And therefore, from that graph, now we land up into a graph structure, which is a which in computer sciences is also known as the DAG, or the directed acyclic graph. So there is no cycle in this graph. Okay. So now we build this kind of DAGs. So these DAGs are also called the cascades that we were talking about. Okay. So now we build such cascades or DAGs for the hateful users that we have found, the 2,300 hateful users, as well as the non-hateful users, the 60,000 non-hateful users. Okay. So now you can measure various properties of this cascade, and these properties actually tell you that how deeply the messages have spread in the network. Okay, so what are the different measures that you can take? So you can measure the size, which is the number of unique users, okay, in this cascade. That is the number of nodes in the DAG. Depth, that is the length of the largest path in the DAG. Average depth, that is average of all the path lengths from the root. Okay. Breadth, which is the maximum number of nodes at a particular level in the DAG. And the structural virality, which is basically the average of the shortest distance between any pair of nodes in the DAG. So these are some of the standard cascade properties that you can mention, that you can measure in order to identify the extent of spread of a hateful content. So we measured the cascade properties for both the hateful and the non-hateful users using their original posts, using those posts which have attachments like video files or images, and using posts which they belong to some specific topics. As I say, that the topics have a very strong connection with the hatefulness of a post. Okay. So once we do this analysis, what we see is that all the different features, the size, the depth, the breadth, the average depth, the structural virality, all of this, for all of this, the hateful users, although they are much smaller in number, their value is much larger than the non-hateful users. And all these differences are significant. And the significance test was done by the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test. So the observation from here is that posts of hateful users, which typically tend to be hateful, that is what is our assumption, have a larger audience. They spread wider, they spread deeper into the network and are more viral. So basically, you see that if hate speech is not, controlled or contained or moderated, then it is going to spread to a much larger audience, to spread wider, deeper into the network, and probably that would typically result in much stronger ill consequences. So similar results are observed when we look into posts with attachments, as I said, posts which have video or audio or image. Okay, so only thing is that the differences have now got more pronounced. Okay, and similar is the case for the topics. Only the differences. So when you consider the posts only, whatever the difference was, this difference only gets more and more pronounced when you consider the posts with attachments or posts under different topics. So far, so good. Now, the question is, so we have seen that if things are not moderated well, then it is very likely that hate speech is going to spread very fast in the network, and that might have like many unpleasant consequences. So the question therefore is like, what could be a good way or good technique of moderation? Can we have some plausible mechanisms of moderation? So this is what we will see in this next work. So there could be, so some of the potential ways that you can think of is something that I have already talked about in the very beginning of the presentation. So you could block or suspend the hateful message, or you could suspend the account of the user. Okay. In fact, several governments, like including the government of India, have established very stringent hate speech laws to prevent its spread. Okay. So then there are several social media sites who have also taken strict action against hate speech. In fact, Facebook has a campaign um, against hate speech, a specific geared campaign to combat hate speech. However, all these types of moderation has a caveat. And the caveat is that it might lead to the violation of free speech. So people might accuse the social media platforms or the government by telling that, okay, by stopping me to, post hateful messages, you are actually curbing my freedom of speech. So these kind of allegations are frequent and normal. So then, how do we go about for a more successful moderation technique? So for this, one of the best alternatives that was proposed in the recent literature was countering the hateful messages. So you try to answer the hateful message or the hate speech with more speech. However, this more speech that you produce is actually trying to alleviate the ill consequences or the bad consequences of the hate speech. So such speech is also called the counter speech. And this is actually an emerging and a promising option and has been backed by several organizations, including Facebook. So this brings me to the second work that we published in ICWSM 2019, where we tried to study counter speech in the online world. So while the last social media platform that we discussed about was Gap, this one is about YouTube. So here we try to study counter speech in the context of hateful YouTube videos. Okay. So we define counter speech as a direct response or a comment that counters the hateful or the harmful speech. And we take three target communities, the Jews, the African American or the Blacks, and the LGBT, and we collect user comments to create a data set and then study counter speech. So what do we do basically? So we scraped comments, the YouTube comments. So if you go to a YouTube link, you will see that following the video, there are certain meta attributes like the number of views, the number of likes, and the comments posted against that video. Okay, so we scraped the comments from 31 hateful videos. Two of the examples are shown here, okay, on YouTube. And then we tried to study counter speech. So there are different types of counter speech. So here I have noted the 8 types that are most prevalent in the literature. The first one is presenting facts. That is, you try to, so that many of the times hate speech is related to misinformation or false information. So you try to present the correct or the true facts in order to rectify the false information, which naturally takes care of the hate speech also. Now then, pointing out to hypocrisy or contradictions. So sometimes the hateful messages are very contradictory, and you can point out these contradictions and show that the hateful message that has been posted is therefore baseless. You can also provide online and offline consequences like legal consequences in order to ameliorate the effect of hate speech. Also, you can talk about affiliation. So what this particular category does is very interesting. So here, say there is a hateful message against a religious minority. Now, and say this has been made by another religion, made by a person from another religion. So So a different person from that religion comes up and tells that, okay, whatever is being said is not correct, and uh, I belong to the religion that my fellow fellow member is also a part of, but I do not believe in the hateful comment that he has posted against the religious minority. So this is, you are affiliating yourself to some religion, and then after affiliating yourself, you are supporting a religious minority. So for instance, you are affiliating yourself to be a Christian, and then you are telling that, okay, I am also a Christian, but this message that has been posted by a hateful message that has been posted by another Christian fellow member against a Jew is not correct. So this is what is meant by affiliation. Then denouncing of hateful messages. So this is a direct denouncement. Then humor or sarcasm. So you try to be sarcastic about the hateful message, or you use positive tone. And the last one, which is not a very welcome thing, that is like you use more hateful messages, okay, in order to fight the already posted hateful message. So this is not a very welcome type of counter speech. However, we see in real life that this is also very prevalent. This type of hostile message against hostile message is also very prevalent. And so although it is difficult to foresee like whether this really serves any good purpose rather than unfolding a offline violence, it remains to see how hostile language actually works. But my perception is that the other 7 types should be much more effective than the hostile language. This is my personal perception. So again, in order to do this analysis, you have to do a data collection. So what we do is that we use the YouTube comment scraper to scrape comments from 31 videos. And then we first annotate these comments into either it is counter speech or non-counter speech. Okay, we roughly have similar amount of data. And the agreement between the annotators, so again, this was annotated by 2 different annotators, and the agreement between the annotators was pretty high. So now in the second step, that is the annotation level 2, what we do is we categorize the counter speech comments, that is around 7,000 counter speech comments that we got. We categorize them into the 8 different groups that I talked about just now. And here again, there were 2 annotators, and the agreement between them is 0.87 on a scale of 0 to 1. So the first thing, when we look at the data distribution, now you take this 7,000 posts, okay, 6,000 or 7,000 posts, and you try to do a postmortem of the data. What you see is that, so the most interesting observation is that hostile language is the most prevalent way of doing counter speech. So that is what it appears to be. Although like this is something debatable whether one should subscribe to more hostile language to actually fight hate speech. However, in our data set at least, we see this is what is going on. However, if we discount this part for a while, we see some other interesting things. So for every different target community, different types of counter speech seem to be more effective. Say, for instance, for the LGBT community, what you see is that pointing out hypocrisy and using humor or sarcastic remarks are the best ways of combating hate speech. Okay. Whereas for the Blacks community, it is the legal consequences, like making one aware of the legal consequences of such hateful messages is the most, it seems to be the most effective way of countering hateful speech. I mean, if we discount the hostile one. So now, after this, we studied, as I said, there are some meta features. We studied some of the meta features, like the average number of likes. So for the African American community, what we see is that the offline and online consequences, that is the legal consequences and the denouncing of hate, these are the two categories of counter speech which are mostly accepted or mostly liked by the users. Okay, so some of the examples are noted on the right hand side of the slides. Okay, so you see the hateful message and then the counter speech corresponding to it. Okay, so what we observe is that most of the counter speakers actually make the hateful speakers aware of the legal consequences and criticize their way of viewing a race in their counter speech remarks. So for the Jewish community, what we see is that the affiliation type of messages are the most liked ones. So I have already told you that what affiliation means. So it's like you affiliate yourself to some other religion and then you tell that whatever hateful message has been posted against a particular minority religion is not correct. Okay, so this is the type. So in general, for the religious minorities, so while for the race minorities, it's typically like online, offline consequences or denouncing of hate are the prevalent methods of counter speech. For the religious minority, it is typically the affiliation that is the predominant way of counter speech. And as I said, for the LGBT community, it's mostly the contradictions and humor or sarcasm. So some of the examples are given on the right hand side are the major ways of countering hateful speakers. So once we got this data set, we tried to do a very simple machine learning task. What was the task? The task was that given a piece of post or a piece of comment, can I say with some confidence whether this is a counter speech or a non-counter speech? Now, you might ask or wonder, why should someone be interested in such kind of an analysis or in such kind of a prediction? So the reason is simple. So as you understand, all this counter speech has been generated through crowdsourcing. Like people have watched the video and then they have painstakingly looked into the comments and then responded to the hateful speech in the comments. However, this work is completely voluntary. And since the hate speech volume is only increasing in the social world, in the online social world, it becomes important for us to think about mechanisms in which computers are able to generate counter speech. So basically, you want to have natural language processing systems or natural language generators to generate counter speech, okay, automatically. So suppose there is a software robot which is actually trained to generate counter speech. Given a hateful speech, this robot is tasked to generate counter speech. Now, this is not a very easy task because the robot cannot, generate XYZ counter speech. So this has to be relevant to the context. So suppose if there is a hateful speech against the minority community Black, you cannot post a counter speech which is relevant to a religious minority community Jews. Okay, so this is absolutely meaningless. So in order to train such robots, we need large amount of data. And in order to get this large amount of data, counter speech data, it is very difficult to obtain this manually. So if we could have a classifier, which a standard machine learning classifier, which given a post can tell us with some confidence whether this post is hate speech or not, that becomes an easy way to gather the counter speech, okay, even without any crowd involvement, so or human involvement. So we tried to do this task and we achieved an F1 score of 0.71, which is not so bad in classifying something which is counter speech from something that is non-counter speech. Not only that, we also tried to do the multi-level classification, that is, um, which class of counter speech this particular comment belongs to, like one of the 8 classes that you have seen. Actually, we did not consider the hostile class because, as we said, as I already said, we do not subscribe the hostile class to be one of the mechanisms of counter speech. So we took the other 7 classes and we tried to classify a comment into one of these 7 classes. And there also we do reasonably well. Like it's not as good as the binary classification. However, we on a 7-class classifier we do reasonably well. However, there are scopes of improvement, and like one can do even better with certain additional inputs, and we are presently trying to find out those clues which can make things even better. And we are also looking into this problem of generating hate speech using the recent developments in the transformer architecture. I guess some of you who are aware of the deep learning developments will be aware of the transformer architecture. So we are trying to use some of these transformer architectures to develop such software robots to generate counter speech automatically. So, so this is a place, if you on the online world, where we dump all our findings. So this website has our own papers, different surveys, various data sets related to hate speech, and the different things that are going on around hate speech over the world, forecast through a Twitter handle like this here. So I welcome you to visit this website if you are interested, and you can also drop us a mail. So all our contacts are present on that website. So you can also drop us a mail if you are further interested. So I'll stop here and take questions. Thank you very much.
Questions? Are there questions from the audience?
Participants, you may ask the queries if any.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, like you said that you conducted this type of study where social media platform you have find it out how many hatred messages have been floated during a particular period. So for this collection of this data, I mean, you must be the member of that particular group. Otherwise, how can you come to know that a particular message is being floated on a particular group or not? I mean,
No.
suppose say I want to conduct a study, how many these type of messages are being plotted on the WhatsApp group, say. So
Mhm.
I need to be the member of such group. Otherwise, anybody else who is the member of particular WhatsApp group, they will not. These type of social groups are very personalized. So how the people will disclose that these type of messages are being floated or not? Or this
So,
information is just available on the internet and you are taking help of that data basically.
no. So, which data are you talking about? The first study or the second study?
Sir, where you collected the data of how many hatred messages are being floated, like you pointed out that
No.
diagram also A, B, C.
No. So we never collected how many hatred messages were posted. So if you remember, so I talked about crawling data, right?
Yes,
So
sir.
there is
Yes,
a
yes.
mechanism by which you can gather data from the from a particular website. So there are something called APIs, application program interfaces. Okay, so these APIs are available for different websites through which you are able to crawl the contents of the website. Okay, so like for instance, Gab has its own API through which you are able to collect all the data that are being posted on Gab, right? You don't even need to be a member, but okay, if you are a member, fine. So once you have this crawled data with you, you can run all the analysis. So what we did was we we handpicked a set of users, looked into their profiles, and like tried to find out if a large number of hateful words are present in their um, uh, in the posts. Okay, so some of these users were labeled as 1, so we started from there. So we looked into users who have like posts, like who have made multiple posts, say 10 plus posts, where you have one or more of the hateful keywords that we made a list of. So these were like high precision 45 keywords. So we searched for those keywords in the posts of the users, and if we found that for a user like he or she has more than 10 such posts, we considered that person to be a hateful user. But that might not be the full set. So we had to run this model to find out additional sets of users who are like, in some way connected to these users, but like are more subtle. So it's not easy to find them like just by looking at their posts. So that's how you go for getting the data. Same for the second
Sir, is it
experiment.
ethical? Sir, is it ethical to look into the post of somebody else?
So as long as so it's a, I mean, what do you mean by ethical?
I mean, somebody has posted something on the
It's open to the whole world. So it's post on the wall. It's not that somebody is sniffing in your email, right? Or it's not that somebody is looking at your messages. It's something that you post on the Facebook wall, something like that. So it's visible to the whole world.
Okay, sir.
So there was one more question about the degroots model. So this is a very simple model. So you have like, so imagine that there is a network, and some of these nodes in this network are say labeled as 1, while the others are all initially labeled as 0. Now you start looking at the edges. So if you recall, the edges had weights. So we from the Repost network, we constructed the belief network, and the belief network gives you some weights on the edges. Okay, so now you every time step, what you do is you update the belief of a person from the belief that this person had in the earlier time point, and from the beliefs of the neighbors of that person, neighbors in the network. Okay, so you sum this up and you get a new belief score. You keep on doing this until and unless over iterations or over time points, the belief score does not change. So at some point in time, the belief score will become fixed, like it will reach a fixation. So once the belief scores reach a fixation, or there is a very, very, very low change, like an epsilon change. So in such case, you assume that the system has reached a convergence. And at that point, you inspect the values or the scores that are like assigned to each and every individual node. Some of them will have a score from ranging between 0 and 0.25. Some of them will have scores ranging between 0.75 and 1. And some of them will have a score ranging between 0.25 and 0.75. So we ignore this middle range because it's very difficult to actually ascertain the inclination. However, those that we are very sure of are the two ends of the spectrum. That is, those who are at 0 to 0.25 and those who are from 0.75 to 1. So for these two sets, we consider the higher among them as the hateful users and the lower among them as the non-hateful users. Is that clear? Okay, thank you. Any other question? Any other question? You can also use the chat box to ask the questions. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I will hand it over back to the organizers. However, if you find some questions later, you are free to write to one of us. You can visit this website that I am showing currently on the screen, and you will get the contacts of all of the people who are working in this area in our group. If you want, you can connect to them and clarify any doubts.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the wonderful thoughts, wonderful concern, and it was very knowledgeable sessions. And I do expect with the interactive participation of all the candidates, so all the queries that may have generated to the individual's mind may have been resolved. We are grateful to you, sir, for sparing the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Participants, for the second session of this STTP that is scheduled from 11:45. So there is a little change. The change is regarding the expert is unable to handle the session in the scheduled period. So Dr. Uday Pratap Rao, he is being engaged with some emergent work. So I have swapped the schedule with him. So he will handle his session at 2:15 p.m. That is in third session of the today, and overall sixth session will be handled by Dr. Uday Pratap, and I will take my session in the fifth session, that is at 11:45 a.m. on today. So see you all at 11:45 a.m. to discuss as well as to practice some of the significant concepts with the case studies on the title Stress and Conflict Management, the Way of Resilience and Satisfaction. Thank you. See you at the 11:45 a.m.